If you listen to this video and you still don't believe in the Gangstalking program, there's nothing else that can be done. There's nothing else. I'm telling you that it's either I'm making all of this up or this is all coincidence. So I've been going through a secret government program known as Gangstalking for the last 13 years of my life, as long as I can remember. With the pause, I know it's been before that because I explained in the video. These people knew you're upcoming. These people knew that you were going to be born before you were born. So they simply prepared for your chosen one life. So that's what gang stalking really is. The spiritual, aspect of gang stalking. So, but you have to also understand, before I continue on, you have to understand that you can be gang stalked for different reasons. Some people are targeted because they left the army. Some people are targeted for different reasons. I know people that was targeted, and being forced to fight for ISIS. You guys know what I mean? I know a couple target individuals myself personally. There's many reasons as to why an individual can be targeted by the secret government program known as Gangstalking. Because of who I am, for me it's mainly something spiritual. However, it's a mix-up because, I do also have a purpose here on earth. I'm on a mission. I have some goals that I told myself that I want to get to. And being that they can read my mind, they're trying to stop me. So I know that some of these tactics are, simply for that, to keep me struggling financially, all sorts of things that they work on. For me to, remember everything, it takes time. I have a life, people have a life, and there's so much things that you have to deal with in this Gangstalking program. There's so much tactics. You can't remember everything. So what I'm doing in this video is really, brainstorm, just remembering, just random things. There's something in this program that attracts these people. I don't know what it is. Take, for example, I remember one time, at this point in my life, I was living with family. And I remember cops came knocking on the door. And they mentioned my name. They said that a person with my name called the cops. And it's just, I just found it kind of strange. Back then, I didn't know of the gang stalking program. Keep in mind that I found out about this program around, because time have been going by, I would say around 8 to 9 years. No, I would say around 7 to 8 years. Not even. I'll say about 6 years. I found out about this program around 6 years ago. And this was probably around, I don't know, 9, 10 years ago or something like that. Or maybe less. Some cops came knocking on my door. And I didn't know of the gang stalking program back then. I was just in the house and they came knocking at the door. And of course, they called me because they, to ask if I called the cops. But, back then, as I said, I didn't know of the program. I didn't think too much of it. However, I knew that it was sketchy. I knew that something wasn't right. And, it puzzled, my family as well, everyone in the house. So, those are the type of stuff that happen. Police is something that is well known in the gang stalking program. I've had, local law enforcement pretend like they don't know me, act strange towards me while they stop me. And it's just so awkward. Like, if you know who I am, I see you. I actively see you. I see you guys on a day-to-day basis. I see these cops, making these Freemasonic turns and, doing all these things in the street. And when they stop you, it's a totally different attitude. They pretend like they don't know who you are. They play stupid. So it's definitely something there that you'll never understand. This is forces that work through people, for one. And some people, I'm not going to, use that. I'm not going to use that as an excuse. Some people do know exactly what they're doing. I always told you guys that they pay these people. It is true that they do pay people in this gang stalking program to watch you. So next on the list, as I said, I'm literally just thinking about random stuff. These events are not in order. These tactics that I've been through, these things aren't in order. I'm just randomly, just thinking these things off the top of my head. But it is indeed true. None of this is made up. So I remember one night I was in the house and I heard a motor. I'm trying to remember the story from scratch. I think I looked out the window first and I saw a car that was parked in the driveway. I don't know if I can also call this the Brighton tactic because the lights were on and it was shining, in the house. But I opened up the door, and right as I opened up the door, the car drove off so fast that it almost crashed, into the curb. And it was just so strange because it was parked up in the driveway. And as soon as I opened up the door, it just suddenly took off full speed. Full speed, man. So these things are meant to scare you. One can only think that that was a very evil entity that was in that car. Who was that? What was that? You have to think about it, man. For you to everything just going all simple and normal. Next thing you know, there's a car in your driveway. You open up the door and it just speeds off, almost crashes into a curb, going like 40 to 50 miles per hour after just, backing up out the driveway. These people are up to something, and we will never truly know their intent.